Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and last night I saw the last Voyage of the Demeter. And just in case you guys don't know what this movie is supposed to be based on or about, the Dracula novel itself is actually a collection of different letters and newspaper clippings and entry logs and stuff like that. So all the Dracula movies you've seen, everything involving Dracula, it's all been based on a book that's actually just a collection of fictional entries into diaries and stuff, right? So this portion of the book that this movie is based on is about a captain's log of a ship called the Demeter, where Dracula stowed away until he can get to London, from Romania to London, and he ends up killing everyone on the crew. And the movie lets you know this right away. So it is one of those things where it's like, all right, so we have this overarching narration from the captain's log, just like the book, and the movie tells us that, okay, so everyone died. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, I've never read the book. I've only ever heard, what's inside, what's it about, but I've seen snippets of the movie. I saw that Renfield movie from earlier this year, so I thought that I was vaguely aware of the Dracula story, right? I get what happens, right? The guy goes to Dracula's castle, and then there's 3 brides there, and then Dracula goes to London, and then he's after this one lady. I thought I kind of got it, right? Van Helsing gets involved, turns out even the most devout film adaptation of the novel changed some things. So when I'm watching this movie, I thought certain things were going to happen, and they ended up not happening. And I was like, oh, what? Huh? And I guess that just goes hey, before you go judge the accuracy of a movie, maybe make sure you've read the novel first, I guess. So basically what we got here is just, like it says, it's a ship full of people, and it's one of those interesting situations where you're like, okay, well, everyone here, most of these people have to die. We know that. And I guess you kind of know that going into any kind of, horror, slasher, creature film anyways, right? It's generally a given. Most of your cast is gonna die. But it's not very often that they just show you they kind of show you an epilogue and everything else is a flashback, essentially, where we see the end result. So I'll say this overall. The design of Dracula in this movie, I really love the creature work they did here. We've seen similar things to this before, where he's a big monster bat guy, right? If you've seen the 2004 Van Helsing, where he can transform into the big bat monster, it's a similar idea, right? I think this one's a little bit creepier, because he's kind of he's almost like a Slender Man type thing, he's so skinny and gangly, that he's just got really long clawed arms, and and they do a pretty good job of interjecting kind of the lore of it without hitting you over the head about what's going on, right? At least until one of the ladies who was there to be a snack wakes up and kind of gives you more of an exposition of okay, yeah, I'm from this village, this guy's from this castle, and we have all these myths about a Dracula, and that whole thing. She explains to the crew what's going on. But they have giant crates full of dirt, because they're supposed to only be able to sleep where the dirt from their homeland is. That's just part of the book. I don't know, I feel like a lot of vampire things don't follow that one, but some of them do. That's just part of Dracula's classical, yeah, he's got to sleep in his own dirt, okay? It matters. I don't know why it matters, but it does. Anyways. So, yeah, overall, I like the creature design, and a lot of the nighttime sequences, I feel like they do a decent enough job of, amping up the thrills of, oh, you kind of see something flying around, and people are seeing something in the background, or, he's hiding in the bowels of the ship, There are a couple of great sequences here where this movie works, the horror element of it, the creature design, it's real creepy and spooky, and, the idea is that these people are stranded on this ship, but also they're kind of doomed, and I'm wondering if this movie would have worked even better if we did not have that that prologue essentially telling you that like most of them are gonna die, even though you know that. Maybe this movie would have worked better keeping some of that suspense by not just letting you know that like, yeah, this ship is gonna get wrecked and most of these people are gonna die like right away. So I don't know. I guess my other thing is that like this movie feels definitely like it was plotted in a similar kind of slow, not even slow, but methodical fashion that like the book might be, you know, like this almost definitely felt like the pacing of a book, right? Because they're, you know, they are taking essentially one little chapter and they have to like expand it into an entire movie, right? But like there's a lot of in between time, you know, like you'll see Dracula here during a nighttime sequence, and then they'll have an entire, you know, like people are walking around talking about what's happening, discussing like that's impossible, that can't be possible, no, science, you know, like, and then, you know, this person's like a religious person, so they're talking about how like it's the devil and this and that, and you know, and I guess my thing is like, you know, I don't know what it is, they give a lot of the crew like their moments to shine and their own little arcs and their own little, you know, but somehow I ended up not really caring about most of them, and I'm not entirely sure what they could have done differently, to be honest with you. You know, like by the end of it, I'm like, and maybe it is just because I'm like, most of you guys are dead. The movie already told me this, so I don't know. You know, like you're trying to get me to really care about your journey. Like this guy is like, oh, he's about to become captain of this ship, and this is his home, and he doesn't want to have to wreck the ship to kill Dracula. And you know, I guess my thing is like they spend so much time plotting about how to find Dracula or how to kill Dracula or what they need to do next now that someone's been bitten. And I'm like, if they had made this more of a modern horror movie where it's like, yeah, maybe there's a couple cheap jump scares, they're cheap but they work, right? Or maybe you like amp up the gore. And that's my other things, like this movie has blood in it, right? Like it's not shying away from the blood, but even like the way people die seem like they seem pretty plain, right? Like this person gets a claw to the neck, right? Like, my neck, you know, or this person gets bitten and you're like, dang, they died. But like, you know, it feels like if you're going for gore and like maximum, like, oh my god, that's crazy, like you would show like oh, he's gonna rip some people in half or something, right? Like he definitely could, and they show so much blood that it's not something that they're like, you know, worried about the rating or something. But it feels like they chose for some reason to kind of step back from going too graphic with it or going too gory with it. Like they kept it to just bite marks or slashes, you know. They didn't like, and I don't know if this was because they're trying to adhere to the book, you know, if they're trying to be like, you know, the book would only get so graphic. It'd be like, oh, this person's been bitten, look at that bite mark, you know, and like that's it. It's not like crazy gory, like blah, like messed up, you know. And not to say people don't get messed up, but I'm just saying like it feels like they could have gone further than they did, and the scares could have been even more than they were, you know. Like there's a couple of great scenes, but like overall it feels like this could have been scarier, it could have been gorier, it could have been just more, because like the idea of this is great. I love like the premise, right? Like let's just take the portion where Dracula is on this boat and all these people are stuck here in the middle of the sea. They can't go anywhere, they can't do anything. You just have to deal with the fact that every night a goddamn Dracula's here, right? And that sounds like a perfect horror premise, right? But somehow it just doesn't quite come together, you know. Like a lot of the dialogue scenes I kind of got bored with. I cared about the captain was cool, our main protagonist, he was a cool guy, but a lot of the other crew don't really care. You could have, you know, they're pretty disposable. You could have, I don't know, you could have hacked them up more, made it more terrifying, right? And I guess my other thing is that like they end this movie in a really strange way, because, you know, for a movie that was seemingly like tone wise and the amount of gore they were willing to show, they adhered so much to like the style of the book. it ends in a kind of a bizarre fashion. They get to London, right? Like the ship crashes like it does in the book, and everyone's like, oh my god, everyone's dead, the captain's tied to the wheel. So our protagonist here, who's this professor, right? Or doctor, professor guy, he's a doctor. So he is the only one left alive, and it's because he managed to jump off the boat, and he's like on a floating piece of driftwood or whatever, and he's left alive. He made it to London, right? And he's in this tavern, and he's kind of talking to himself, and he's talking about like, I'm gonna find Dracula, I'm gonna avenge the crew, this and that. And we see someone walk into the tavern, and they got a big top hat, and they got the same cane that we had seen earlier that Dracula had, the wolf cane with the silver handle and all that. And he's like I thought Dracula was gonna have a human form, because they say earlier in the movie like, oh, he's got a human form, he can appear like a man whenever he wants. This dude still has monster face. Like, he's still really pale, and he's got the really sharp, like his mouth is full of sharp fangs, not just like two, but like a bunch of sharp fangs, and his eyes are still all real crazy. And it's like, this is his human form. He's walking into a tavern like this, and he's wearing human clothes now. Like, he was not wearing human clothes the entire movie. Now he's wearing human clothes, and I'm like, so this is his disguise. Like this, gee, I wonder which one's a Dracula, right? So I thought that was a strange decision. And then Dracula kind of like notices him and like brushes past him and runs out the door. And so our main doctor guy, he's like running after him. He's like, I'm gonna avenge the crew. And Dracula's like running down this alleyway. And then the movie ends. The movie just ends there. We don't know what happens to the doctor. He doesn't kill Dracula. Dracula's just out there now, and it just kind of ends in this like cliffhangery type way. And I don't know if that was necessarily supposed to be a setup for a sequel or something. I thought, I was like, oh, if you're gonna make a sequel, if you're gonna set this up, our main character's a doctor, maybe have him meet Dr. Van Helsing, right? Like, wouldn't that make sense to like tie it back into the characters from the book or something, or at least like that would have been some sort of like finality to it, of like, oh, he met Van Helsing, now he can tell Van Helsing about everything he saw, and we can like get down to business. Like, we can, if they do a sequel or if they just want to end it here, either way, I, the audience member, know that because now that he's contacted Van Helsing and they're both doctors, they can like, hey, let's discuss how to kill this guy, right? But it doesn't end like that. He just follows Dracula down an alleyway, and then it ends. And I'm like, oh, so what happens? Because I don't know. And that's where it just kind of gets strange. Like, you could arguably say like, okay, the book happened, and maybe you could kind of still say like the events of the book are happening both before and after this whole ship ride, right? Like, which is the premise of the movie. But then when he gets to London, it's like none of the book characters show up. No one mentions like a name of like, oh, it's I saw this lady Mina over there. Whoa, or something like that, right? Like there's, like book characters are alive, But they don't do anything like that. It just kind of ends with them chasing them down an alleyway, and we don't know what happens. So yeah, I don't know. Overall, while this movie had a couple of great sequences, man, their plan to take Dracula down wasn't as epic as I wanted it to be. The kills weren't as crazy as I wanted them to be. Even a lot of the parts at night, or I'm like, okay, you have an opportunity to be real spooky here. I'm like, you could have been spookier, So I was like, dang, it feels kind of like a wasted premise. I'm like, dang it, this is such a good idea, just having like this part of the book. But ultimately, I was like, I don't know, man, you spent too much time on disposable people, and I guess you tried to really make you care, and maybe they were kind of trying to fit the tone of the book, I guess. But I don't know. That's where I'm kind of left at, where I'm like, there's parts of this I really like. I'll tell you this: the trailer, like if you watch the trailer of this thing, like the trailer feels a lot spookier than the movie ever actually is. You know, the movie's just methodical. You know, it's just like weeks have gone by and the animals have been slaughtered and one of our crew has gone missing. No one aboard knows what's happening. And I'm like, okay, can we be spooky? Can we, you know, like, I don't know. Anyways, that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about the last voyage of the Demeter. Are you know, do you care at all about the book, or like, or the other iterations of the Dracula story, the movie and all that? Do you care at all if any of that was followed? You know, or would you be disappointed if it like just, I mean, are you happy with Dracula being a creepy bat creature, right? Because like, I will say that if nothing else, they nailed the way he looks. He looks cool, you know. Like if I saw that thing as like a Halloween animatronic, you know, like at Spirit Halloween or something, I'm like, that's a pretty cool animatronic, you know. Like he looks really neat, you know. So if nothing else, they got that out of it. Yeah, anyways, that was the last voyage of the Demeter. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.